Good morning, everybody. How y'all doing? Okay, so today I'm going to give you a little educational tidbit on how to find information, how to find answers to questions and such. Okay, so a textbook, for example, is a piece of reference material that's been published, and it may have been written years ago. Some of them, it could be republished with some minor changes, and that textbook may have lasted 10 years. Luckily, in anatomy, things don't change so much. A little bit here and there. There's some research that was done in the early 2000s that might make things a little different than they would have been 20 or 30 years ago. But generally speaking, if you pick up an anatomy textbook from the 90s and then one from the 2000s and one from today, they're going to be generally the same for the most part, especially the anatomical pictures, some of which are even better in the older texts. I personally like Netter, his images, the way he draws. But if you were to look at something like Gray's Anatomy, it's going to be way overcomplicated. But I mean, honestly, you could take an image written or drawn by Leonardo da Vinci, and it's going to be very similar to one that was written or drawn recently. Okay, so it's important for you to make sure that you look at these various sources so you can see some slight variations. Ultimately, it's usually just the artist's interpretation of that picture, how they drew it. Okay, if you're looking at a cadaver, a picture, that's a little different. So when we're in the lab, and I talk about this in person, so that's why I'm making the video on it. When you're learning anatomy, and hopefully you would have gotten this in your AMP1 class, but when you're learning anatomy, the first thing you should do is teach or learn the words, how to pronounce the words, what they mean, what they are, their origins, etc. And then look at the two-dimensional picture on paper, okay? Whether it's a drawing or an image on paper, doesn't matter. Just that it's two-dimensional. And then three-dimensional, a model, a plastic model or whatever, rubber model. And then the last and the most complicated is a cadaver. Being that a cadaver doesn't have color variations to the same degree that a model might. Models are painted. You're not actually red inside. When you look at a cadaver, everything's white or beigeish color because there's no blood left. Let me rephrase. You are red inside everywhere because there's blood, but there's some areas that are slightly variations. But you don't necessarily see outlines of blue, and it's not to the same. There's not as much contrast. If you were to open up a human body, everything's going to look like blood or bloodish color. Okay, if you open up a cadaver, everything's going to look beige, right? So you need to really understand the delineation between one organ and another so that you can make that decipher the difference in the cadaver. That's why you don't start looking at cadavers right off the get-go. You look at cadavers, that's the more advanced. The earliest, the easiest one is the picture, the two-dimensional paper or computer screen. And then the model, okay, so that you can manipulate the model. You can look at it at different angles, turn it around. That's important. And if you can't do that so easily because it's a virtual class, then I have to give you pictures from a different angle. But it doesn't mean just because you're looking at the heart from the posterior aspect that it's not the heart anymore. It's still the heart. It's just looking at it from the posterior aspect. So this is why it's really important that you remember your anatomical terminology, directional terms, anterior, posterior, lateral, medial, superior, inferior, so that you can know what cut it is, right? You need to know if is this a transverse cut of the brain? Is this a longitudinal cut of the brain? Is this a sagittal cut of the brain? Is this looking at it from the posterior aspect or from the anterior aspect? You need to refresh if you don't know that, okay? That'll help you clarify what position or what picture you're looking at. I think this conversation is a whole lot more valuable than me holding up a model and telling you this is this is that, this is this. Because you finding that structure is what's going to help you remember how to find it again. I mean, remember, education is about learning everything. It's about learning how to learn, especially undergrad, learning how to learn. If you don't know, that's okay. You just need to know where to find it. So if I put up a picture and I give you a whole list of terms and you have to match them, well, damn. Go open up your textbook to the index, to the end of the textbook. Look at the word index, heart, page 95. Go to the heart. Oh, holy crap, there's a picture of the heart, right? And if you have to do that to every single one in those word bank, then you're good, okay? That's understanding the anatomy. That's the easier part. The physiology is more challenging. You actually have to read the text and have the explanations. Dr. Tutor is going to do a much better job than I do, okay? But in person, I can inflect certain emphasis on things. It's difficult on an online course, but you knew that because that's why you're taking an online course. It's easier. It's on your own time. It tends to be a little quicker to get the things done. You don't actually have to go into class. There's a lot of benefits. I took a lot of online classes. I know that. I'm saying, but this way, you have to get that assignment done. That's why you have that virtual physiology assignment, and then the discussion questions. If you fail to go about the process for those two, the anatomy and the physiology, then looking at the discussion questions are going to be really challenging because you're not going to understand any of it, and you're not going to go look for those questions and find that exact answer. That doesn't work like that. Some of them, because they originate from the text, you might find some, but you're going to find the topic it's talking about. But it's up to you to synthesize the information and explain it to me. And I don't expect, PhD level explanations. I expect undergrad level explanations. But I do also know that you're an undergrad level student, so you don't know that much. So I don't really want your opinion. That's really not that important to me. I want to know that you know where to find things. And I want to know that you know how to synthesize this information. How to take what you know and extrapolate the important stuff, mix it around, understand it in your brain, and then put it down on paper to communicate it to me, okay? And so when you find that information in the textbook or in an encyclopedia or on a Google site, remembering that there are different levels of research. A textbook written 10 years ago isn't going to be the most definitive source relative to a journal article. Okay, you can find the information anywhere you want, but credibility is important. Is that information that you got credible? Is it somebody else's opinion? Is it like the bro science, the dude in the gym giving you advice? He doesn't know what he's talking about. But if you take it as gospel, then you look like the idiot, right? So don't do that. When you're getting information for a college level course, you always find the information in the text, you synthesize it in your brain, you explain it, and you tell me where you got it from. Well, according to the tutorial text, this is this way because of this. Well, according to Webster's dictionary, a fracture is defined as this, right? So if we were having a conversation about the differences between a fracture and a break, they're the same thing, but break is the layman's term, a fracture is the proper term. Right? So if you didn't know that and you were arguing with somebody that, no, a fracture is not a break's not a fracture. Is a stress fracture a fracture? Yes, it's a crack, essentially. Okay. Is a green stick fracture the same as a dislocated fracture or a compound fracture? They're all fractures. They're just different types of fractures. And if you didn't understand the anatomy of the bone, you didn't know that a younger individual has more flexibility in his bones, therefore they get that green stick fracture. When a bone breaks, it kind of bends and then snaps and has little shards sticking out of it, kind of as if you were to try to break a green stick, like a sapling, a tree, right? It wouldn't snap, it would kind of bend and maybe some splinters would come off of it because it's got a lot of pliability because it's a young tree. Children's bones are just like that. So when they break bones, sometimes they get a green stick fracture. Different than if an old lady falls down and she snaps her bones, her femur goes snap and it goes completely off. That's a compound fracture. But if you just had a little crack in it because you did too much work for too long running, you had a stress fracture, you'd have a little crack inside the bone. It'd be really, really small little lines on an x-ray, okay? And then, so how did you find that fracture? Well, it hurt, you had symptoms of it, and then I took an x-ray, and the x-ray confirmed the fracture, okay? So if I were to ask you a question, and I said, well, can you explain the difference between why Jimmy fell out of the tree and got a green stick fracture, and while, Mrs. Mary broke her hip when she fell on the concrete and had a dislocated hip and a fracture of her acetabulum, why is that important? Well, this is why that happened. So this would be a question you would have gotten in AP 1 to explain that difference. But now here's the kicker, right? Now, if I asked you that question and I said, Explain that to me, but then tell me why Mrs. Mary, who fell and broke her hip, fractured her acetabulum, and dislocated her hip joint, acetabulum, right? Why is that particularly relevant in the cardiopulmonary system? Okay, now we have to draw on some of the information we learned in A&P1. We have to understand fractures so that we can write the first couple sentences of that question. And now we have to tell you, well, because this is why geriatric population usually dies, as a matter of fact. It's primarily is because of falls. Falls are secondary to feet and hand weakness. They don't have the strength in their hands or their feet, so they lose their balance. They don't have the ability to hold on to something like a cane, a walker, a banister, etc., and they fall, okay? So the reasons for the geriatric populations falling is because of neurological degradation, which is the first thing to go from a psychoneural perspective. So they start to lose their neural conduction, which degrades their balance. Because of their balance, it then affects their muscles and their stability in their joints. Then, because of weakness in their hands and their feet, they don't have the strength to hold themselves up when they get off balance, and then they fall. And simultaneously, they're also experiencing calcium degradation or bone degeneration or osteoporosis preceded by osteopenia. That's when they fall and they break their hip, it's because their bones are really brittle. So there's like 5-6 different reasons or pieces that lead up to that answer. I want to know that you understand how all that works so that you can show me you now understand everything from A&P1, muscle, bone, and nerve. But now also, can you explain to me why that affects this patient from a cardiopulmonary perspective? Well, because if they can't walk anymore, now they end up in a hospital bed, okay? And then because of that, they lose circulation. Usually they develop clots, whether they're pulmonary embolisms, or they're due to poor diet and other comorbidities. They may have a predisposition to heart disease, so they're going to develop clots and then throw clots when they're in this sedentary position for a long period of time and get a stroke, a heart attack, or a pulmonary embolism, okay? I'm going to yell at my dog real quick. Would you stop? That's what that sound was. German Shepherd thing that they do that. But you understand that's why when we answer these discussion questions, we have to understand this long-term interdependence between systems, okay? So endocrine is just the beginning now. I think I might have given you the answer to one of them. I don't recall what question is on the cardiopulmonary question, but I think that might have been one of them. It was in the past, okay? But the same principles apply. And now for endocrine, think about the endocrine system. What is so special about the endocrine system? It is a communicative device or a communicative system. Let's remember for a second how the body communicates from A&P1. Nervous system, right? The nervous system is broken down into multiple subsystems, sympathetic and parasympathetic, autonomic, parasympathetic, sympathetic, okay? If we're talking about the somatic nervous system from A&P1, those are the nerves that go to your muscles that create muscle function. Stop! Okay, it goes to muscle function and contraction. Think about the autonomic nervous system is the way that we communicate fight or flight. You're going to experience this in your A&P2 lecture where we talk about the autonomic nervous system. We don't really do that in lab. But I want you to understand that this comes from this unification of these two systems, endocrine and nervous. All right? So now if we look at the nervous system and autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic, sympathetic, fight or flight, right? The gas pedal and the brake pedal. Are those two systems relevant to the heart, as an example? Absolutely. One speeds it up, one slows it down. More importantly, more specifically, it's kind of a heart regulator. The heart is naturally trying to beat at a higher rate than 65 beats a minute, which is our normal resting heart rate for the average person, okay? The sympathetic and parasympathetic are going to put holders on it. Let me give you an example. The BMW M3, okay? If you were to take that car stock out of the factory, it's going to run at X speed, right? Whatever the speed is, okay? But it's capable of running much faster than that. But in America, there's a regulator put on it. Most cars have such, okay? But if you took that same car to Europe and put it on a racetrack, it is capable of performing much faster, much better than it would on the streets of Honolulu, okay? So that's a regulator. The heart has a similar situation happening due to the autonomic nervous system. It regulates, it holds back the heart from revving too high, okay? Well, stuff goes boom, all right? Some bombs happening out there, or you get excited. What's happening? You're going to run away or you're going to run towards. Those two systems, autonomic nervous system, parasympathetic and sympathetic, are going to control whether or not you get enough neural input to the heart to speed up faster or slow down in order to get more blood to your legs, to give the muscles the oxygen necessary, because that's what's happening in blood, right? It's delivering oxygen via hemoglobin to the system, to the muscular physiology in order to contract, okay? Now, if that's happening from the nervous system's perspective, what's happening from the endocrine perspective? Well, if nervous system is like the radio wave that's going over, or the phone wave, the phone message that's going out a wire, like old school houses, right? Had a phone on the wall, goes out the wire, goes to the tree, or the telephone pole, goes down the line to another house, answers the phone. That's the nervous system. It's a wired system, okay? It's connected by nerves and neurons that go through the body, right? An actual wire, all right, or an actual nerve. Whereas the endocrine system is like your cell phone. You call, it sends a signal up to a satellite, bounces it to a satellite, bounces it to a phone. It's all happening through the air. You can think about the endocrine system like that. The endocrine system secretes a hormone, okay, that's released into the blood, and then on the system that's accepting that hormone, it has a receptor that matches that hormone, and it grabs it and it communicates that through that hormone. Using the adrenaline as an example, okay, it's produced in the adrenal glands. Where are the adrenal glands located? Well, they're just superior on top of the kidney. Where's the kidney located? Well, the kidney is on the posterior aspect of the torso model. Okay, it's about two-thirds the way down the torso. Okay, it's lateral to the spine. Okay, so if I give you a kidney shot in the back, right in the guts, right in the back, where are you going to feel it? Right there on the side behind your rib, right below your rib cage. Okay, so you know where it is. You know that the adrenal glands are located just superior to those. Okay, you know that the adrenal glands produce X hormones. Okay, what do those hormones do? Okay, they speed up or give you that shot. My dog's tail now in my face. See, I'm real too. I got my kids aren't here causing havoc, just my dogs. So if you look at if you're thinking about how does the endocrine system affect cardiorespiratory system, well, that's how, right? And so now when you guys give me your presentation on a patient, you're going to talk about basically what I just said and elaborate further. And when we talk about this on our cardio perspective, then we'll elaborate more on that as well, okay? So endocrine system is a communication system. It runs parallel to the nervous system. It operates with function. Its function is to produce hormones. Hormones are produced out of a gland, right? So the endocrine glands, right? Your thyroid, your parathyroid, your thymus, your testes, your ovaries, your pancreas, your pineal glands. What else? I think that's all of them. I don't know if I think that's all of them. And then you go through all of your systems and how do those affect function, okay, of whatever it is your body's doing. And so that's what those discussion questions are for, okay? Please don't hesitate. Ask questions. I love answering your questions. Happy to get on a phone call with you or on a video. This particular video is a little long. We're going on 20 minutes here. I encourage you to watch these, and if you can go back to my YouTube channel, and some of them are repeated, and I give from last semester other ones that are on there that you'll see some things that you will catch up to later. Okay, but keep at it. I'm sure y'all will do well, and let me know if you need anything. So long.